the awareness of your presence here now. We breathe into this moment. We allow this awareness of God's presence to flood within us, to permeate every aspect of our being. We allow this love to flow through us as unconditional love, blessing this moment, blessing each one in this moment. We let go. We let God. For this realization of your presence, O God, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Your spiritual Swiss Army knife. Well, many kind-hearted, well-intentioned people move along their spiritual journey oblivious to the fact that they really do have an active part to play. Active in not just affirming some belief, but to practice in their development of that finely polished spiritual presence. This progress along the spiritual path is actually work. You can think of it as hard work, but it doesn't have to be. It can be fun work. Fun work is a lot less effortful than hard work, right? So we can experience our growth in a way that is encouraging, a way is fulfilling, a way that is communicated to other people, perhaps as we communicate diseases, so we can communicate our spiritual presence. And this process of communicating our spiritual presence is where in unity we have our 5 principles of unity that talk about these practices, these tools of transformation, of prayer, meditation, denials, and affirmations. And I'm going to talk about those 4 tools as one block today. I don't know, how many of you saw the article about the secret discovered of Roman concrete? Did anyone see an article? It turns out it was... The study was published here in the last couple of weeks, but it was picked up by a number of different organizations, from Science News to Patrick, I'm hot, from Science News to the BBC. And one of the things that has mystified scientists, archaeologists specifically, is that Roman concrete has maintained its strength for 2,000 years. We have concrete of our contemporary concrete deteriorates after a period of time. It becomes weaker, cracks appear, and suddenly we have foundations shifting and the foundations developing cracks, and we get cracks in our walls. And so this idea that the Romans 2,000 years ago had concrete perfected, and we've lost that skill. We've lost that knowledge. But we've regained that knowledge. We know now why Roman concrete is so persistent. One of the things that archaeologists have noticed is that the Romans built seawalls in their harbors. They built underwater structures. And if there is an environment that causes concrete to deteriorate, it's seawater. It's the shifting of seawater, it's the erosion of seawater, and it's the deterioration that comes from the chemicals in seawater. It turns out that the Romans, whether it was by chance or whether it was knowledge that was determined through experimental method, which is, of course, the basis of our science, they came up with this recipe of concrete. 1 part pumice, a little bit of lime, and seawater. That's it. Turns out that those 3 components, the most important part is the pumice, and another important part is the seawater. There's a process that goes on with Roman concrete. When it was poured, they used seawater to mix the lime and the pumice, but the mixing and drying of that concrete was just the beginning, because there was seawater that was still in the concrete. It continued to work at literally an atomic level, a molecular level anyway. And what seawater does with pumice and lime is that it creates a microstructure that actually continues to grow, so that what would be a place of fissure, a place of shearing in the material, is actually sealed together with this compound that's called aluminum tobermorite. Aluminum tobermorite is very rare on the planet. It is a mineral, it is a compound that has specific properties that at a very small scale, the molecular scale, it creates plates, and these interleaving plates grow together, and they are the secret of Roman concrete. And you're probably wondering, now why in the world is he talking about Roman concrete here on a Sunday morning? I was wondering that myself. I found this fascinating, and I said, okay, now how can I take this and put it into a talk? Actually, if we go back to our 5 pillars of faith and the tools of transformation, we see that there are really 3 tools, not 4. Denials and affirmation, that's part of the tool of shifting our subconscious. Denials and affirmation. Denials are to drain the power that we have of our existing beliefs. Patrick, I'm still a little bit hot. Draining the power of our existing beliefs. And then the affirmations are to build a new structure of beliefs. And it is at the subconscious level that structure, that reconstruction occurs. And that is important because the subconscious is where we get most of our responses to our experience, where we get most of our emotions. In fact, our emotions are solidly based in our subconscious. So our life experience is very dependent upon what that structure is in the subconscious. So denials and affirmations are an important part of that. But prayer and meditation is also an important part of this transformation, because prayer is our way of connecting with the all that is all. Meditation is our way of discovering our inner landscape. And so as we connect with the all that is all, it is important for us to become familiar with that inner landscape of consciousness. And from those two, the outer and the inner, we then perceive our experience through the beliefs that we hold. And thus comes in denials and affirmations. So those three tools are, they work together. That is, you could have a very powerful denial and affirmation practice, but if you don't have the connection in the outer or familiarity with the inner, then the denials and affirmations are going to be like a pair of scissors that only has one blade, right? You need to have all of this working together. And it turns out that as you shift your subconscious, your experience of the interior is going to shift. And as the experience of the interior shifts, and as your response to the outer from your subconscious, as your response to your experience shifts, so will your connection with the outer. So these three components are really like three threads in a weave, three threads in a braid. They work together to bring a more coherent experience, a more coherent progress in our spiritual journey. Does that make sense? So these three tools, while we mention them separately, they are very important to each other. They work with each other. You know, Roman concrete was used in the Pantheon. The Pantheon has a dome that is the largest unreinforced concrete dome in existence. Now think about that. Located in Rome, what do we know about Italy? Italy is a very seismically active area, right? And for this huge concrete dome to remain intact for over 2,000 years, that speaks to this interior structure of Roman concrete. And that's what we are trying to do with the practice of meditation, prayer, and denials affirmations, is that we're trying to construct a spiritual beingness that will withstand all of the trials and tribulations of our experience. I mean, how many of you have had personal earthquakes? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the experience, isn't it? That we go from one earthquake to another. Most of the time, we're structurally intact. Sometimes we're not. I had an experience this week with someone who had a very powerful, loving relationship that she thought was going to withstand the test of time. Turns out her expectations were wrong. That she found out that this person that was her soulmate, her loving other, was still married to a second wife, and they were planning on getting married. Turns out that he had an addiction that became very apparent. I mean, so she had this relationship with a person that she thought was her life companion. And it fell apart with one email. Boom. The process that we go through in life is that we can have that one email, that one devastating piece of news, that one experience which transforms our whole worldview. Kind of an oh my God with an exclamation point. And what we are doing in the spiritual journey is we are building an edifice that will withstand the earthquakes. It will withstand the erosion of the sea. It will withstand the power of the waves. It will withstand all of the stuff that may, in fact, happen in our experience, to be able to step forward in joy regardless of what the circumstances are out there. So as we look at these three practices of prayer, meditation, and denials and affirmations, what we're talking about is we're talking about a mix of Roman concrete. Patrick, what we're talking about is thank you, is a recipe that is fairly simple, fairly straightforward, but we have to work the work. We have to do the effort to make this work for us. We hear about how Jesus prayed. It turns out that Jesus had several different forms of prayer. You are undoubtedly familiar with these. Boop, one more. There is the conversational prayer. There is the prayer for something better, some different experience. And an example of that is Matthew 21:22. Patrick, this is, well, never mind. Okay. So Matthew 21:22 is about praying with others, and about praying for some condition to change. Another is prayer of gratitude. And these prayers of gratitude are an affirmation. The first conversational prayers of having something change in our experience, that's really an affirmation, right? It is saying that this is going to change. You know, I'm praying for this to change. I am assuming this will change with prayer. And likewise, prayer of gratitude is an affirmation. Then we have the prayers for others. And this is really what we traditionally think of as prayer, right? I mean, how many of you are on Facebook and you have someone that makes a post, please pray for such and so, right? Turns out that I think that is one of the benefits of Facebook, is the requesting of prayers by others. What does that do? That really calls upon connection, doesn't it? It calls upon others to empathize to the extent of being able to offer prayers. Now, I would argue with the prayers that are offered, but the intention is to bring us closer together in those requests and those responses to those requests for prayer. And then there is the contemplative prayer. And the contemplative prayer, we see, for instance, in Matthew 14:23, Jesus goes to the mountain. Right? He releases the crowds and he goes to the mountain. Well, in Unity, we teach that going to the mountain is really an expression of meditation. It's calling forth the meditative practice of dwelling within and understanding what our interior landscape, our psychoscape is. So these forms of prayer that are represented in Scripture really are a description of the observable. Jesus wrote nothing. He had no secretary to capture his thoughts. And so what we have is a recapping of his teachings some 30, 40, 50 years after, as long as 70 years after the crucifixion. And those are in the books of Matthew, Mark, John, and Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. Where's Luke? I don't know. Okay, so can I continue with my talk with any credibility if I can't remember the four Gospels, please? All right. So we have these descriptions of how Jesus prayed, but what was his interior experience? You see, that's what we are trying to achieve is an interior experience, right? I mean, that is what we have, is an interior experience. But that is, if we want to emulate Jesus, it's not about the description of what he did, but rather what was his interior experience. So if we take it from the top, prayer, actually not from the top of this list, but top of the prior list. If we take it from the top, prayer, in my mind, prayer is about communicating with the all that is all. And the all that is all is not just God. The all that is all is all. Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. That proclamation, that declaration by Jesus, that describes for me that it's not just about my relationship with God, it's my relationship with all. How many of you have heard of the term panpsychism? I just ran across it this week. We'll hear more about it because I want to do some more research before I launch into a discussion of it. But panpsychism is a concept of creation that Roger Penrose, how many of you know Roger Penrose? Roger Penrose was one of the key physicists of the 20th century. Roger Penrose is one of the advocates of panpsychism. And what panpsychism is about acknowledging that every aspect of creation has a conscious experience. Now that's mind-blowing. Certainly mind-blowing to me. Every aspect of creation has a conscious experience. We each have a conscious experience. And then there is that universal consciousness that we sometimes tap into and can acknowledge that, well, that may in fact exist. I mean, I have these experiences where I feel like I am indeed connected to you or to several people. In fact, we talk about the consciousness of a community, right? And it's the consciousness of a community is not just a figure of speech, but it's about that shared consciousness that we all have. We each have an individual consciousness, and then we have a community consciousness. And I have said many times that I consider God to be consciousness itself. Well, Roger Penrose and the panpsychism advocates say that the universe is permeated with consciousness. And John Wheeler, another significant physicist of the 20th century, said that there's a problem with consciousness. While we all experience it, there is no basis for consciousness in the physical world. There are no laws that would indicate the foundation, the components, the structure of consciousness. There is nothing in the physical world or in the laws of physics as we have discovered them that would lend the arising, that would allow the arising of consciousness. Yet we experience it. What is it? One of the great mysteries that we have right now. But Penrose and others says that, well, consciousness is actually permeating the universe, and that we have the personal experience of consciousness, and we sometimes have the collective experience of consciousness. But consciousness does not exist from the perspective of the laws of physics. Okay, so what we're doing with prayer, meditation, and our denials and affirmations is that we are building a structure of consciousness that will withstand all of the stuff of our experience, all of the adversities of our experience. Why is that important? That is important from the standpoint that when we are offered this opportunity to be on this planet, and I put that in in terms that may or may not feel comfortable to you, but we're offered this opportunity here on this planet to come and know better who we are, to come and appreciate our relationship with each other and with God. And in my worldview, that is our primary purpose, is to learn that. But if we are inundated with fear, if we are constantly being tossed hither and yon by the winds of time, if we are finding that relationships, circumstances in our life, our health issues, other things that can cause adversity in our lives, if we allow those things to shift back and forth, we are constantly in fear, which will prevent us from the realization of who we are and prevent us from the realization of our relationship with each other and with God. If we are in a survival mode only, which is what fear throws us into, if we are in a survival mode only, we will not have that opportunity to realize who we are and what our relationship is to each other and with God. So, what we're talking about is building a solid consciousness. So think about this. Prayer. Prayer is a means by which we connect with the all that is all. And I suggest to you that the most effective way for doing that is through unconditional love. To project unconditional love. Practice it in every circumstance, in every situation, even when nothing seems to be calling for that practice. We extend unconditional love. Meditation. Coming into the experience of the interior. Coming into a realization of who we are at the very fundamental level. And then we connect with the all that is all. Notice that we now have a structure, right? We have an extension of our essence, a beingness that is very solidly built. Like the Roman concrete in the harbors of the shores of the Roman Empire. I mean, these structures are found all over. These breakwaters are found all over. So, building that structure of consciousness, shifting our beliefs, fortifying our emotions, restructuring our subconscious, and that then being the perception, the lens through which we perceive our experience. There it is. Knowing that we are connected from the very essence of our interior to all of creation, and perceiving our experience through the lens of love, through the lens of tuned emotions. I say tuned emotions because there are times when we need to be, right? We need to stand up. We need to be assertive. We need to be willing to stand for what is right. Emotions are an important part of that strength that we have in adversity. So, building the interior, building the subconscious structure, building the interior and exterior relationships is a means of what we could look at as what the Romans did when they built their pantheon, when they built their breakwaters. With this concrete recipe, pumice, lime, salt water, prayer, meditation, affirmation, denial, denial, affirmation. Those are our tools. Let's use them. Let's use them. Let's have a common practice of meditation. Let us be practiced in our extensive unconditional love. And let us shift our subconscious so that our perception of our experience is viewed through the light of love. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, as we breathe into this moment, as we allow this moment to be fully revealed, as we allow our presence to be fully exposed in this moment, let us envision our beingness as this solid edifice from the seed of our soul, from the very essence of who we are, to our connection with the all that is all, embraced by unconditional love. We look upon our experience and see it as a blessing, as a constant blessing. We look upon the circumstances of our lives and see those as lessons. We look upon the relationships in our lives and we see those as opportunities for practice. We look upon our life path and we see that we are here now as a result of all of our responses to all of the circumstances. Through it all, we give thanks. We give thanks for the events, the relationships, the circumstances. We give thanks. And we envision that our path, our movement in our experience is towards a greater realization of unconditional love. And we acknowledge that we are in control. It is our choice. And so we choose. We are powerful spiritual beings in this human experience. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of Alleluia.